Do we wait for the light?
You can hold up the gavel to, yeah, there you go. I know.
Call to order, calling the December 3rd, 2019 Heritage Preservation Commission meeting to order. First, we start with a roll call. Liz, can you please do a roll?
Commissioner Davies,
Here.
Coleman,
Here?
Mueller,
Here.
Welbert,
Here.
and Chairperson St. John.
Here. That moves us to item 3, adopting the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I will.
Steve? Steve makes a motion. Any second?
I'll second.
Good job. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All ayes, the motion carries. That moves us to item 4, visitor presentation. And it's apparent there are no visitors here at this time. So with that, we'll move on to item 5, approving the previous HPC minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes. Yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve it?
So move.
The second?
Second.
And to approve the August 6, 2019 HPC minutes, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All say aye. Motion carries. That moves us to item 8, other business, since we don't have any consent.
Consent first. Was there-
Excuse me?
We don't have any items under there.
Okay, well,
Okay. But there is no,
So we are
there
on
is
other
no
business
6
then?
or 7. All right. So there are no consent or action items this evening, so we'll move to number 8. Sure.
Right.
So other business, each of us go around and see if there's anything else you'd like to discuss under other business. Greg?
I don't know what from your update, it looks like we're going to cover the things that I would have questions about, so, no.
Greg, Steve?
I guess the only thing, I was looking at the 2006 historic context study. There are recommendations on each chapter about properties, and I just wondered if the city has any thoughts on that, on getting historical designation for additional properties or not?
Well, that is certainly something that we can discuss further. If we kind of have highlighted any other properties here in the city, or even landmarks, that we wish to add to the local designation list. It could be one of those goals for 2020 that we established tonight, is maybe we do like a walking tour or something like that to kind of, get our minds rolling on some potential properties that could be added to that list. So I know there's, specific stuff that we want to update, but in terms of local designations, I think that'll be an important thing that overall as a commission, we take a look at and see if there's other properties to add. So whether we do that as a work session or something like that, we can certainly make that happen.
Do we, this commission, initiate that, or?
Yes, if you're interested in us reviewing that a little bit more, then it should come from you guys to initiate that process, and for us to kind of set something up to start to discuss that further. So if there's, a collective interest in wanting to do that, then I think that's something that we should definitely start to talk about for 2020 and how soon we'd like to do that.
Okay, and then we probably should be consulting with this Historical Society too on that. I
Right,
think.
yep. They'll be a big partner in that, so.
Interesting.
Are we going to establish goals here?
That's one of the
This time.
things I do want to
Okay.
go over kind of at the end of my little update, so, yep.
Good.
Cool. Christine?
Not at this time, but I'm interested in that. So, I mean, yeah, if we could do, even, like I was just thinking, if we did a walkabout, then we could present that to the
Yep.
historical committee at that time,
Right.
what we think,
Right.
so.
Cool.
I mean, I'm a member too, so.
Cool. Scott, anything? you'd like to bring
Yeah,
up?
I agree with everyone here, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
relatively new. Is there a process, Liz, to talk about next year, and do we
Yes.
look at goals, charters, process and all that? So if that's coming up, awesome. That
Yep.
was all that was on my mind.
Yeah, so,
Those are issues.
at the end of my little thing here, we can kind of discuss our goals a little bit further for 2020 and maybe even put that down in kind of a draft form of some specific things that, you know, we're interested in doing as a commission. And then we can review those goals, make sure that we're all good with them and prioritize kind of where we need to. And then from there, let's use next year to really dive into those, so.
So when would be typical to set the goals?
Well, we can start discussing them tonight. You know, we've gotten at least one idea of something to continue to look at. If anything else kind of gets sparked in the process, you know, we can meet as soon as next January or even February to kind of go through kind of the goals that we've thought about at this meeting and in between the meetings, and really set kind of a draft form of us to go off of to use for the rest of the year. So depending on, you know, how soon you guys are wanting to act on this, I would say we can either look at January or February to kind of reconvene and figure out what our goals are. But tonight, you know, is kind of a initiation to that. If you have anything specific that you're thinking of right now, just as Commissioner Mueller stated, and then utilizing the time in between now and our next meeting to kind of provide any further ideas, I think is what we should focus on.
Yeah. We need to kind of think about it this month and be able to mull it over if there's anything we
Right.
need to look at, even to look at our commission charter, to
Yep.
kind of refresh myself and what our charter is and what we might be missing, or.
Right. Yep.
Is the charter available online?
The designation list,
Yeah.
it should be.
Our charter is a commission.
Oh, like your duties?
Our
and-
duties, what our objectives are to,
I believe it is. If it's not, I will send it to you.
could you
It
please?
should be in our commissioner handbook, which is a handbook for all the commissions. So Planning Commission, City Council, EDA, Human Rights, and HPC should be in there. That should be on our website. If it's not,
Yeah.
I'll make sure to send it to you. I think we have a couple different documents. I know there was one I sent out maybe a couple of years ago that the city of Stillwater put together, and it's a more hefty, informational about kind of the duties of the HPC and some resources that you can use to kind of help you in some of the decisions that you make as a commission. So there's that one, and then we have our own commissioner handbook, specific to Chaska, which again, kind of goes over your general duties with the city.
Is the Stillwater one available digitally?
I believe it
So you
is.
don't have
I
to
believe
mix-
it's also on their website. So if I find the link for that, I'll share it with you
thanks.
guys, because that's always a nice refresher in terms of some of the work that we do, because again, we don't see a lot of applications come in frequently, so it's always nice to kind of keep your brain still
Yep.
fresh with these different things that the HPC does. So I'll make a note to share that with you guys again.
Cool.
I know I got a copy, but it was years ago.
Yeah,
Of the Stillwater one?
No,
Ours.
the Chaska.
Oh,
Commission.
yes.
Yeah, I've also read it, but it's foggy right now. Be
Yeah.
nice, like a work refresh. What did we do last year? What are we
Yeah.
thinking of? Is there something more proactive? Are we reactive or proactive?
Mm-hmm.
And should we be looking at some new stuff? Good, thank you. Anything else on other business, before we turn it over to Liz?
I'm good.
All yours, Liz.
all right. I just have something not too hefty for you guys. So I just kind of wanted to kind of go over our year of 2019, just from a glance perspective. Because we only met 3 other times besides this one. But I guess some of the projects that you were able to get your hands on this year were pretty significant projects, and ones that are still ongoing. So I just want to give you a refresher on the work you've done, and then kind of what we're working on as we move forward as well. So I'm going to go back an entire year, back to December of 2019 is when we first reviewed the site alteration permit for the Hammer Saloon building. And that was for the project for a new residential development for active older adults, 55 plus, on the Hammers property. It's about an 86-acre site here within Chaska, just a little bit north of downtown. But it has a locally designated structure on it, which is the former Hammer Saloon. So we looked at a site alteration permit as a part of that overall request to figure out kind of what their intentions were with that building. I'll get into it a little bit more in some other slides. And then we met back again in March of 2019, just to kind of touch base. We had the Historical Society come in and kind of give a spiel on kind of the work that they do and any current projects that they were having displayed at the Historical Society Center here in downtown. So it's always nice to kind of have them come in because they're always a huge partner in the work that we do. So if you ever want them to come and speak to us, again, just request it, and they're always happy to come and let us know what they're currently working on. And then in April of 2019, we re-looked at the site alteration permit for the Hammer Saloon. The developer and the interested investor in the Hammer Saloon building decided to amend the initial deadline required for the site alteration permit to be June 1st of 2020 instead of June 1st of 2019, which we saw as a huge benefit in terms of the amount of work that needs to be done for that structure, and giving the investor some time to really think it through and figure out what they need to do with that structure. So that's only coming up in a couple months, or I'm sorry, 6 months here. So hopefully we'll hear some updates from Kirsten Case on kind of the initiatives that she's able to figure out for that building. And then also at that meeting, we reviewed the site alteration permit for the S Lot and Ernst Home redevelopment project, which you did approve at that meeting. And again, I'll get into the details of that in some later slides. And then in August of this year, we just reconvened to give you some updates on the projects that you've currently reviewed and approved, and kind of the basis of what we're doing tonight as well. So with the Hammer Saloon, here are the pictures of kind of the current structure out there. So it is a vacant home building on the Hammer site that again was looked at as a part of the overall development plan for the Pinnacle development. And luckily, Kirsten Case kind of came in and noted her interest in wanting to preserve the property instead of just completely demolishing it, which the developer was interested in doing. So having a private property owner who also owns significant property here in the city, to have her get involved with this was very exciting to see the potential in possibly preserving this building. And then here's the concept plan for that Pinnacle residential development. The Hammer Saloon is kind of based on the northeast corner of that overall development, and they've kind of sanctioned off an area that could help accommodate the location of the Hammer Saloon, which would stay in its current spot. So any of the road work and newer improvements would kind of work around that site there. So again, where we're at now is Kirsten is currently working, I believe, with some contractors right now to understand kind of what the implications of the condition of the home is right now, and figuring out what type of work needs to happen right away. I know with the developer, the exterior work is kind of the priority right now in terms of what you see on the outside. So I think that might be the first phase of things, and then the second phase would happen in the inside. But right now, she's trying to evaluate everything just to get an understanding of what the cost implications are for that. So as of right now, we have yet to hear back from Kirsten on kind of the status of that, if she's having any success in terms of financing and figuring out a game plan. So again, once we know more on that, we will be happy to share that with you. Who knows, the next time you might see it might be for an actual site alteration permit to treat the home on the exterior. So we will see. And then the other significant project you had your hands on was the S. and Ernst redevelopment site. So this property is in the heart of downtown Chaska, right off of Walnut Street. It's just north of the city-owned parking lot, and it's composed of 2 lots. One housed a former downtown house that didn't have any local designation per se. It was not in the best condition, so that was torn down, as well as the house to the south of it, to kind of make way for this new parking lot here. And then shortly after that happened, the S house to the north of that burned down and ultimately was demolished when we couldn't find any funds to save it. So that lot is currently vacant. We ultimately moved the Ernst home to the southern lot to help aid in the Fireman's Park redevelopment project. So it currently sits there today. And then maybe a couple years ago, we were able to find an interested developer to redevelop this entire site, to reuse the existing Ernst house, and then they are proposing a new townhome building just north of that, and then a carriage home building just to the west of that. So they were hoping to redevelop this as a rental housing unit project, totaling 7 dwelling units. And you guys did approve this overall plan. You know, they made it through HPC approval, concept plan approval, and preliminary approval with the city, but they have yet to come back for final approval. And it all kind of stems on the overall financing for the site. That does present itself to be a challenge because it is a very dense site, or a very compact site. So density is the key in terms of trying to make it work, but with density comes some larger construction costs for a more compact site. So I think that's kind of what they're running into right now, is the construction costs for this project is much more than the revenue that they're gonna get back for the rental units. So I know they're currently working with staff here at the city level to figure out some unique strategies to try to make it work. There will be some city involvement with TIF, but we do, again, we have to get to a point where there's revenue being made off of the site, and I think that's still what's being figured out right now, and hence why it's been kind of a stall in the process. It's going to take some creative thinking out there to make sure that this site actually works. So again, I think at one point we did let you know that they're working on potentially a different layout for the site that could mean downsizing the density on there and where the buildings sit. And you know, that's all we know right now. We don't have any firm understanding or firm confirmation from the developer on what direction they're deciding to take right now. So until we have more information, we will obviously keep you apprised of that. But that's currently kind of where it sits right now, is they're in kind of this creative thinking phase right now to figure out how to make this site financially work. So we will see kind of what happens with that.
Does the city require that it be rental rather than for sale?
No.
So
No.
they could sell units.
They could if they wanted to. Again, I think it all stems off of what's going to provide the most financially, I'm at a loss for words, but what's going to provide the biggest financial gain for the site. So, but I think they probably saw the rental market a little bit stronger now in terms of the market, so that's why they decided to go the rental route. But again, they could do both if they really wanted to, or they could go either way if they really wanted to. So we'll, again, keep you apprised of any more information that we receive regarding that. Depending on kind of the changes that happen with the site, I know we let you guys know that there could be changes, and if it was less than kind of what was done before, it didn't necessarily need to have a site alteration permit done again. That's if the front side of things will stay the same. So if anything changes on the street side, streetscape side of things and overall massing, we'll obviously have it in front of you guys again. But they may be kind of reconfiguring this back area, eliminating the carriage house altogether and making these more into just garage units themselves. So we didn't see that as a necessary site alteration permit request again, because they are downsizing what they're doing out there, and it's not affecting the streetscape level. So again, if anything changes density-wise in terms of an increase or the overall streetscape, it will be coming in front of you guys again for approval. So we will hopefully know more next year. Can't really predict a date quite yet. I know they're still working on it, so. So that kind of wraps up kind of what we've reviewed over the course of 2019. So I think, overall, you've been able to have your hands on very significant projects here in the city, and will continue to have participation in that as it moves forward. Some pieces that you'll probably have more involvement in once these projects start going is with the City Square West project. Again, that one's kind of unpredictable in terms of when it's going to ramp up again. But we do foresee probably sometime this year that things will start to pick up. Again, it all kind of comes down to the financing of that and other moving parts that kind of affect that block that will kind of tell us when and how it's going to happen. So that will be on our radar until we kind of have some firm understanding of when that will move forward. So that kind of brings us to our next task, and we've kind of delved into it a little bit, is figuring out what our goals are for the next year. As a city, we've seen some changes on the Walnut Street Historic District with some of the demolitions that occurred and relocation of the Ernst House over there. So, we only from a far off level have we started speaking to the state in terms of potentially updating that national district to be more in line with the current conditions out there. The last time, or basically when the district was put in place, was the late 70s, early 80s. So the district inventory or form is very, very minute, I guess is the right word, compared to what they require now. It requires a much more hefty research and analysis process for establishing these districts. So they've kind of encouraged us, and we've seen it as well, to try to update that and get it, get all the information that we need into that historic district. So that's all probably going to lean on us being able to get a grant to start that process, and that's, I think, a biannual grant process. So it may happen earlier this year that we start to look into that, depending on kind of what our priorities are as a commission for goals. We'll kind of determine when and how we should be looking into that. But that's one that us as a city has identified as a potential goal. And then Commissioner Mueller pointed out, looking at our local designation list now, and if there's any potential properties to add to that list. So that, again, we're, playing our part to preserve those significant properties here in the city. Was there anything else that I'm missing that we want to look into or potentially add as some goals for 2020? Again, we don't have to have all of the answers right now, but if there's anything that comes to mind right now, let's start to talk about it. If not, again, we can use the time between now and our next meeting to really think it through and figure out if there's anything specific that we want to touch on.
That's where my head's at. I'd like to review those documents we talked about and just kind of stir the cobwebs out and
Okay.
maybe chat over it, debate what can get out of that, what are we missing?
Yeah, I think there'd be some ideas that would come out of that. You're right.
There has to be.
Did you guys have any other questions regarding any of the work that we've done or any other updates that you're hoping to get? Anything like that?
Was Red Bench 2018?
No, they were
was
2017, I believe.
'Cause
I think.
I wasn't on the commission in 2017, I don't think.
Yeah, because I think,
But I do remember them coming in here. We talked about windows and some stuff, and
Yep.
I didn't recall if it was this year or the past year when they did that.
or I'm sorry, it was 20, did you ask if it was 2018?
I think it was 2017.
Yeah, 2017 seems right. Yeah, they've almost been open for 2 years now, if not already. Yeah, that's one big success story,
Yep.
I think.
Are there any updates on the City Square West?
Basically what I've already told you. We're currently working with the property owners over there, I think one in particular, about getting the purchase agreement solidified.
Yeah.
And once we get movement on that, then we can start looking at all the other moving pieces that kind of relate to the City Square West project. Because it's not only going to be the City Square West block, it's going to be the DMV block, looking at the potential of adding the library over there, and what do we do with the DMV? But also looking at some other civic facilities here in downtown, like our Social Security facility, which is at the Carver County Courthouse. We see them moving into another spot because they're outgrowing their space. So we're trying to accommodate a lot of different things. So again, I'm kind of outside of the thinking of all this, but there's all those pieces that kind of need to get figured out in terms of where they're going, because that could open, the City Square West project could open doors for some potential spaces, but looking at the tenants who are involved on that block and moving them to other sites here in the city or within that block are kind of the other pieces we have to keep in mind moving forward,
A
so.
lot of moving parts.
Yeah,
A lot of moving parts.
Yes, I think, just when we thought it was only going to be one block, it's much more than that.
Yep.
It's always better to make the project or problem bigger, is sometimes how we like to look at it here. So, that's all I got.
Well,
Thank you.
Obviously, if we hear more, we'll let you know. But at some point, you guys will be involved more specifically in that process in terms of kind of the overall look of that block, because that will be really important. for downtown, so.
Cool. Well, thank you, Liz. Thanks for
Welcome.
bringing back all the memories.
Yep, it does. So you
Unless-
guys should be proud of yourselves for a good year that we had last year. And then, you know, let's continue to keep making progress and figuring out those goals. And, you know, we have a good start at least with some goals to work on. But if there's anything else, just start thinking of them now. If you have to drive through town to kind of spark your thinking on that, you know, we'll reconvene and go over that in more detail and figure out kind of what our priorities are as we're moving forward, so that we're
Question.
continuing to do good work.
Is the gazebo in City Park part of the preservation district?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. It's a part of the Walnut Street Historic District.
Okay. And there is, I understand that there has been some thought about upgrading it or remodeling or something like that.
Yes. Our Parks and Rec Director and Public Works Director have identified that park for potential improvements. I don't know the last time the gazebo was improved, but it's been some years, so, you know, there's that to look at in terms of where the improvements need to be made, and I'm thinking, or I think they're also looking at the overall park as well in terms of kind of the circulation of it. I don't know too much detail other than that, that it has been brought to their attention to look at.
But is the gazebo, because it's a structure of some sort?
Yep.
Would that come under our review?
It should, because it is locally and nationally designated. If we're planning to make changes to it, then yes, it will come under your guys' review. Yep.
So city buildings are not exempt, or publicly owned buildings aren't exempt from the...
No, no. If it's designated locally or nationally, it has to go through your approval. So, if
Well,
they're
I would
doing
like
work.
for us to keep an eye on that and what, you know, if there is a plan moving forward, because it really needs some work. And it's, you know, such a showpiece for so many different events, both public and private, that
Right.
it's, I'd like to see us get a crack at it.
Well, I'll definitely relay that message over to the right people so
Okay.
that they're aware of the importance of it.
Good question, I didn't hear that. Yeah, when it-
So thank you for pointing that out. Anything else?
I'll talk to Lisa over at the History Center.
Okay. Yeah, the History Center might even have some great ideas in terms of properties. That's kind of on their radar. They're always pretty good with that, and they'll have the information to go off of in the event that we start to progress down that route of
Yeah, that's one
designation.
of the secrets. If they have enough information over there, then it's
It's,
a good candidate.
exactly. So that's, I mean, they're always our, you know, huge partner and dynamic duo to making this stuff happen, is whether or not we have any history or any knowledge of some of these properties and how they were used in the past to make them that significant piece of the environment. So they're going to be a huge resource for us moving forward. Right,
Okay,
that's all I
thank,
have.
thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
With that, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, wait, before you do that,
Oh, but wait, there's more.
since we're at the year end here, we should reappoint the chairperson and the vice chair for the commission, just so that we're being kosher with who we have for that. So Commissioner St. John is currently the chairperson, and then Commissioner Coleman is currently the vice chair. If you two are wanting to continue, or if there's anyone else who's interested in either of those positions, I think this is the time to talk about it and make a motion on both positions so that we can kind of solidify that for year 2020.
I'd make a motion to reappoint Les if he's willing to do it.
Yeah, and Liz asked me, do you want to put your name in hat for another term, because my term expires? I said, sure, and I would be interested. But I don't own anything. If someone else says, hey, I'd like a turn, it's exciting and high pressure, but but Liz
Well at it, though.
keeps you on track here. Thank you, Liz. But yeah, I'd love to do it again. This is quite an interesting role we have in our city here.
Well, good.
But if anyone else.
So no one else has any interest in the chairperson position? Okay. So we'll make one motion, a first and a second, on reappointing Commissioner St. John for chairperson. And then, Chris, do you wish to continue as vice chair?
Sure.
Okay. Does anyone else have interest, or are we all on the same page here? Okay. So I think for purposes of making this official, we will let's do the first motion on the chair position as Commissioner St. John. So we'll have a first and a second on that, so,
Well, I made the motion.
okay.
I'll second it.
If you can reference that back, since you're the chairperson.
Yeah, all in-
First
I don't
by,
know, all in favor? I feel like an Argentinian dictator or something. Yeah, all in motion, all who agree, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks.
perfect.
Thank
And
you.
then we will do
Then
the
a motion
same.
for Christine
Yes.
as vice chair.
So moved.
Who second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
None opposed? Congratulations,
Thank you.
Christine.
Wonderful. Well, we're good for
Thank you.
2020 now, so you
Thank you.
can proceed with adjournment if you'd like.
I'll make a
Do
motion
you
to
have
adjourn.
thoughts as when the next meeting will be?
Either January or February. Depending on how busy January is for Planning Commission, it might push us to February. So if you guys are okay with the February,
Yeah, if we don't have anything pressing to do,
unless you want to do January, we can push for that, for sure. Actually, it shouldn't be an issue. 'Cause then we'll take about 4 weeks to kind of process any other goals that we might have. Yeah, let's plan on that, reconvening in January.
Okay.
Good.
The homework of looking at any other potential goals.
Okay, cool. Well, so Steve made the motion to adjourn, a second? Second to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, this meeting is adjourned.